So I have lately learned something. No one actually wants a unique story. Absolutely nobody. When people say they want a unique story, what they're talking about is a partially unique story that is mostly familiar. Think about it for a second. The most read books are always not the most unique books. However, this is what they are. Those books are mostly familiar but partially unique. They always have something very unique about them. It's simple, it's concise, and it spins what we knew before in a rather novel way. Let's look at some of the most common cliches in science fiction, because I feel like science fiction is one of those genres that just keeps evolving at a ludicrously rapid pace. What was once unique is no longer unique. So, at some point, the idea of teleporting from one point to another was absolutely novel in science fiction. And the person who thought of it, or the person who finally had the spark for that, they must have wondered, hey, wait a minute, if I want to go from this planet to that other planet, it's going to take me months. So what if I just boom boom? What if I just teleport? What if I just zip and zap out of there, right? Zip from here and zap out of there. Another concept, hyperdrive. It's the same thing but given a galactic scale. So someone initially thought of this system for small planetary travel, and then it became galactic travel. And then authors started building huge stations where massive planet, or let's say moon-wide ships, could dock and then travel across the galaxy through some sort of a portal. So when you hear people say that they want a unique story, what they're actually talking about is their desire for something, okay, familiar, sure, but taken in a slightly new, fresh direction. They don't want the same road. They still want to be on a road, okay? Don't take them from the road and throw them into a volcano. You still want to keep them on the road, but maybe you want to let a deer cross the road. It's unique, it's interesting. Maybe you want a car crash. Maybe you want some random guys, let's say an insurance scammer who's trying to throw himself on a car. I know it's a rather silly example, but it does happen, and it's a novel experience. The idea is to have something very simple yet capable of taking what was old and mundane in a slightly new, fresh perspective. Another of my favorite authors, Brandon Sanderson, who also writes epic fantasy, explains this in an elegant way. I think you should listen to this, and I think you should pay attention.
Oftentimes, I'll have a plot idea or a character idea or a setting idea separately from one another. I often use Mistborn as an example of this, right? Where did Mistborn come from? Well, Mistborn came from, I was reading Harry Potter, and I thought, man, these Dark Lords never get a break, right? It's always some dumb kid comes along and ruins the plan they've been setting up for a lifetime. Same with Lord of the Rings, right? And so I'm like, what if Frodo got to the end of Lord of the Rings and Sauron said, hey, my ring! I've been looking for that. Thanks, that must have been a really hard journey. Thanks for coming all this way. And then killed him and took over the world, right? Separately, another time I was watching one of the Ocean's movies, and I was reminded how much I love the heist genre, right? One of my favorite movies of all time is Sneakers, fantastic little film. I've loved it all the way going back, you know, things like The Sting, you know, Michael Crichton's The Great Train Robbery, any sort of heist story. Inception is just a fantastic one. You can always grab me with a heist story, and I thought, I don't think I've ever read a fantasy heist. And a book grows out of multiples of these ideas combining together. And when I have something that feels like the seed of a novel that's working, I'll often go back to my book and say, are there any other ideas in here that mesh really well with these ideas? I often describe, like, ideas are like these little atoms bouncing around. And like when they mash into each other, they create some cool reaction, become something new. It's not how actual science works, but you know, it'll work for the fantasy author.
I hope you learned something from this video. It's always a partially unique story, not the most unique story, okay? So take care, please subscribe and support me. I know this was a very small video, but I intended it to be that way so I can concisely communicate my point. Thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you next, I suppose in 4 days. Have a nice day and God bless you.